Hi everyone, I'm Reverend Jim Keat, and this is The Word Made Fresh, the weekly video Bible study where we take a look at the upcoming lectionary passage and then talk about it a bit on the video and in the comments. So, I'm riding a bike, because I'm going to go show you something. Okay, I got a ride. Here we go. Okay, today's passage, we're still in the Gospel of Luke. That was a pretty good bike ride. So let's take a look. Luke 20 verses 27 to 38. Now, just a spoiler alert, but what's right behind the camera is gorgeous. And I'm going to show you at the end of the video. So you should probably keep watching until the end. You could just fast forward, but that's cheating, and you're not a cheater. So let's just read the text, talk about it, and then I'll show you what's... Whoa! And then I'll show you what's back there. That was so cool. Okay, Luke 20 verses 27 to 38 says this. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to Jesus and asked him a question. Time out. We've maybe touched on this a little bit in the past, but there are mainly four religious sects in this time. There are Sadducees and Pharisees and Zealots and Essenes. The Pharisees we talked about in the past, how we often, stereotype them into being the antagonists, but really they were in many ways the righteous religious leaders of the time. The Sadducees are often kind of counter-Pharisees in that they are both kind of at the center of the ruling religious space. With one difference. The Sadducees only follow the first 5 books of the Hebrew Scriptures, the Torah: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, otherwise known as the books of Moses. Spoiler alert, Moses didn't write them. The Pharisees, however, look at the rest of the Hebrew Scriptures, the wisdom literature, the prophets, all of that good stuff. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, all of them. Because of that, because the Sadducees look just at the 5 books, the texts they have, whereas the Pharisees look at the larger collection of writings and the oral tradition, this leads to some fundamental differences in what they believe. Does this sound similar to Christianity today? One difference is on believing in the resurrection. That's what this is all about here. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to Jesus and asked him a question. Because in the first 5 books of the Torah, the Hebrew Scriptures, there's nothing about resurrection. That is kind of inferred in other parts of the Hebrew Scriptures. So the Sadducees, being the literalists they are for the Torah, no resurrection. Pharisees, they see it in their oral traditions, the other writings, resurrection. All right, got that? Here we go. They asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second and the third married her. And so in the same way, all 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. Okay, you following so far? It's a little confusing. This is a law from Deuteronomy chapter 25 or 26, somewhere in there, which says basically what they're laying out. A woman marries a brother, the brother dies, the woman then marries the other brother. That brother dies, marries the other brother, and so on and so on. This law was written in a time when men ruled everything, like even more than they do now, because some of those glass ceilings are beginning to crack and maybe even break. But back in the Deuteronomy laws, men basically wrote the book, literally in some cases. So this law was designed to help the woman, to provide for her in case of her husband's death. So she's not just a widow with nothing. Like we talked about a couple weeks ago, orphans and widows are often the ones who are most marginalized and in need in the society. So here is an example of a law that helps support a potential widow. So the riddle that the Sadducee offers is 7 brothers, first brother marries the woman, brother dies, second brother follows the law, marries the woman, he dies, third brother dies. And if they had children, then the children would care for the mother. That's the thing. So no children, next brother. All the way through, 7 dead brothers, dead woman, who's married to who in the resurrection? That's the question. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had married her. Jesus said to them, those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore because they are like angels and are children of God. being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed us in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive. So there's a couple things going on here. First, the Pharisees who, like we said, Torah only, there's no resurrection there, so they don't believe in it. Jesus goes with their obviously biased question. They know their answer. They're just trying to trick Jesus. And he takes their own text, their own tradition, their own Moses, and uses that to kind of show how resurrection might even be glimpsed in there. But what I want us to kind of just focus on is really looking at the posture behind the question that the Sadducees bring to Jesus. Because this is, I think, what we can learn from and maybe even become confronted by in our own world as liberal or progressive or whatever label you want to put in front of the word Christian. The Sadducees ask Jesus a question when they think they already know the answer. That's not really a question. That's just trying to make your own point. That's like listening to someone only to wait for your turn to talk. That's not really listening to someone. So it makes me think, when do we do what the Sadducees did? When do we, you, me, all of us, when do we approach anyone with a question when really we already feel like we know the answer to our question and we're just trying to prove our point? What would it look like for our faith to truly approach the text, God, the world around us, with openness and wonder, rather than closed off with certainty and some sort of attitude of, I know it all? I mean, I'm guilty of this mainly when I talk with my dad, probably, because that's where I feel like, come on, Dad, I know everything you're going to say. I've read all your books. I've drank all that Kool-Aid. I know all those arguments, but I went to seminary, so I have the real answers. Can I approach my dad or someone like my dad with a sense of openness and wonder and curiosity? I think the reality is both sides do this. Like another example, I was at the Creation Museum a couple weeks ago in Kentucky. I thought it'd be fun to explore what happens when a pastor who believes in evolution goes to the Creation Museum. Video on that coming soon on Theology on the Road. New video series. What? And I was talking to some of the visitors there, asking them their favorite parts about the museum, and asking them, what's the risk of believing the earth is billions of years old? And they said things like, well, then you start doubting the Word of God. You start opening yourself up to all sorts of ideas from science and reason and man. So I think the sad reality is we all become Sadducees. We all think our tradition is the only real tradition and everything else is just, unnecessary, useless, unevolved, unenlightened. So maybe let's try this. Let's try an experiment in the comments below of asking questions, true questions about God, spirituality, the world around us, from a posture of openness and curiosity, not a posture of, I think I know the answer already. Can you do it? I'm challenging myself to this too. That, I think, to me, is what the Sadducees can teach us. And I think it's what Jesus is reminding us. Jesus takes their question. He doesn't brush them off. He engages them where they are with their biased point of view, and then he helps them hopefully shift it. Now, I'm guessing the Sadducees walked away with a huff thinking, oh, that Jesus, he doesn't know anything. But maybe like one of them started scratching their head and like whatever that thing people do with their beard. I can't grow a beard. So, okay, write your questions in a comment and let's actually explore openness and wonder and curiosity. And speaking of openness and wonder and maybe your curiosity for what's behind me, I'm gonna show you. Okay, here we go. You ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Here we go. What? All right. Now I'm gonna do one more thing while I'm up here. This is my drone. Let's go fly a drone. Want to see? Next week we'll be back with another episode of The Word Made Fresh. But until then, check out this drone footage. Hopefully it doesn't crash. Okay, here we go.